Before we begin this journey together, let me ask you for a small gesture that helps immensely. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps this space alive and allows us to explore the deep and hidden structures of the soul with the attention they deserve. Now let us open the first door of this exploration. There is a question that quietly follows every human being, even when they never say it out loud. Why was I born exactly when I was born? Not simply why you arrived in a certain year, but why in a specific month? Why in that unique slice of time, and not a little earlier or a little later? For many, this seems like an unanswerable curiosity, but for those who dedicate their lives to understanding the deeper architecture of the human psyche, the timing of birth is never random. Throughout ancient traditions, and especially in the scriptures, time is not seen as a straight line of days passing one after another. Time is sacred substance. Time is symbolic. Time is alive. And when we turn to the Hebrew calendar, the oldest spiritual map still in use, we begin to understand that each month carries its own spiritual climate, its own energetic imprint, its own archetypal tone. Months are not merely divisions, they are portals, openings, thresholds where the eternal touches the temporal. Psychology, when observed deeply, reveals the same truth through a different lens. Jung spoke of the unconscious not as a personal container, but as a vast ocean we all drink from. Within it live patterns, universal forces that mold the shape of our inner world. These are the archetypes. And although modern science prefers to treat birth as a biological event, the deeper psyche knows better. The moment of your arrival is not incidental. It is synchronistic. It is meaningful. It is a chosen doorway. Across decades of clinical work, a striking pattern appeared again and again. Individuals born in the same month consistently expressed resonant symbols in their dreams, similar crises in their life transitions, familiar strengths and recurring emotional themes. At first glance, this might seem like coincidence, but there are no coincidences in the language of the soul, only synchronicities. Events externally separate but internally connected. Just as the ancient world organized its festivals to reflect cosmic movements of spirit, your birth month reflects the moment when your soul stepped through a specific archetypal current. 12 months, 12 tribes, 12 apostles, 12 thresholds of consciousness. The number 12 has always symbolized completion, cycle, wholeness. To be born within one of these 12 segments is to be stamped with a particular inner rhythm, an orientation of your soul toward its earthly mission. Your birth month is not a cage, nor a destiny carved in stone. It is a starting point, a lens, a doorway that colors the light entering your story, and when you begin to understand this doorway, you begin to understand yourself with a clarity that feels like remembering something ancient and familiar. And now that this first gateway has opened, we move naturally toward the next question. If my birth month is not an accident, then what guided that choice? If your birth month is not an accident, then the natural question becomes, who or what guided that timing? To answer this, we must first release the modern idea that life unfolds through randomness. The deeper layers of the psyche, those that speak through symbols, intuition, and dreams, know nothing of chance. They move according to meaning. They work through patterns. They listen to a rhythm that exists far beneath conscious awareness, and it is from these depths that the moment of your birth arises. In the ancient world, people understood that life was woven into the fabric of the cosmos. They saw the seasons as reflections of divine intention. They knew that time carried qualities, not simply durations. Modern culture, however, has flattened time into numbers on a calendar and hours on a clock. But the soul never accepted this reduction. Something within us still responds to the symbolic nature of time, the same way we respond to archetypes. And birth, being one of the most sacred thresholds of existence, is no exception to this symbolic order. This is why it is important to distinguish what we are exploring here from superficial astrology. Astrology, in its most diluted form, claims that external forces control you, but depth psychology sees the inner and outer worlds as mirrors of the same underlying pattern. In Jung's language, both the moment of birth and the structure of your psyche emerge from one shared source, the collective unconscious. You're not shaped by the month. You and the month are expressions of the same archetypal movement. Imagine the unconscious as a vast landscape where certain energies become active at particular moments. As the year cycles through its 12 phases, different archetypes rise, peak, and recede. Your soul chose to enter the world at the moment when the archetype most aligned with your purpose was present, like stepping onto a stage at the exact moment your scene begins. This is not fate. It is harmony. It is resonance. It is the soul recognizing its own reflection in time. Across decades of clinical observation, this principle became impossible to ignore. People born in the same month reported similar dreams without having met each other. They wrestled with parallel fears. They expressed the same inner strengths. Their crises, turning points, and emotional landscapes echoed one another like variations of the same melody. This pattern pointed to something profound. The month of birth carries an archetypal imprint that shapes the soul's developmental path. Ancient texts confirm this idea through their structure. The Hebrew calendar, for example, organizes each month around a spiritual event, a liberation, a purification, a renewal, a revelation. These events are not arbitrary. They reflect inner psychological processes that every soul eventually undergoes. To be born during a particular month is to begin your journey aligned with one of these inner processes already active within you. And so, once we understand that birth is a synchronistic choice made by the soul, not an accident, we can move deeper. If the soul chooses its moment, then it also chooses the archetype through which it will first express itself. This understanding leads us directly and gently into Chapter 3, where we explore the 12 archetypes themselves. Now that we understand the birth month as a synchronistic choice of the soul, we can finally turn toward the deeper architecture that stands behind that choice. The 12 archetypes that structure the sacred year. These archetypes are not abstract ideas, they are living forces. Each one represents a psychological movement, a spiritual invitation, and a specific phase of inner growth. Together, they form a complete cycle, 12 expressions of the same divine pattern unfolding through time. To grasp these archetypes, imagine the year as a great spiritual landscape divided into 12 chambers. Each chamber vibrates with its own energy, carries its own symbolism, and shapes the soul in a unique way. When you are born, you enter through one chamber first, and its qualities become the dominant tone of your early inner life. January is the creator, the one who steps into the chaos and brings order, vision, and initiation. February is the refiner, the fire that purifies, clarifies, and separates the real from the false. March is the awakener, calling the soul out of sleep and into conscious movement. April is the resurrection, the pattern of dying and rising, the triumph of inner renewal. May is the blossoming, where hidden potentials finally open into visible expression. June is the sacred union, the integration of opposites, the harmonizing of what was once divided. July is the liberator, breaking chains, confronting inner pharaohs, and guiding the soul into freedom. August is the harvester, gathering abundance, recognizing maturity, and acting decisively. September is the preparatory guardian, who foresees, organizes, and stands watch over what is to come. October is the balancer, holding justice and mercy, shadow and light in a single steady hand. November is the grateful heart, who sees blessings even in seasons of fading light. December is the eternal hope, carrying the unbreakable light that survives every darkness. Each of these archetypes corresponds not only to psychological patterns, but also to sacred events in the Hebrew calendar. Moments of liberation, purification, revelation, renewal, judgment, and celebration. These events were placed intentionally throughout the year, because the ancients understood that time mirrors the soul's inner processes. Every human being, across a lifetime, moves through all these phases repeatedly. But the month of birth marks the one that shapes the beginning of your journey, your natural spiritual home base. These archetypes also share deep connections with one another. The creator of January needs the refiner of February to purify what was begun. The awakener of March prepares the way for the resurrection of April. The blossoming of May naturally seeks the integration offered by June. None of these archetypes exist alone. They form a sacred mandala of human development, each necessary, each incomplete without the others. And now that the 12 archetypes are alive in your awareness, the next step becomes inevitable. Understanding which one governs your life's doorway. This brings us gently into Chapter 4, where we explore your dominant archetype in depth. With the 12 archetypes now laid out before you like a symbolic map, we can turn inward and ask the question that truly matters. Which of these patterns is the doorway through which your soul entered the world? This dominant archetype is not your whole identity, but it is the first language of your inner life, the tone that colors your earliest instincts, challenges, strengths, and emotional rhythms. To understand your dominant archetype is to understand why certain themes repeat themselves throughout your life, why you respond to situations in a particular way, why your dreams carry certain symbols again and again, why your crises seem to follow the same pattern, no matter where you go or who you become. Nothing about this is accidental. The archetype of your birth month acts as the psychic climate you were born into, a spiritual atmosphere that shaped your earliest steps on the path of individuation. For many people, the recognition of their archetype feels like a homecoming. It is common to read or hear the description and feel a strange, almost ancient familiarity. A soft yes rising from somewhere deep within. This is the unconscious recognizing itself. These are not new truths being introduced to you. They are old truths being remembered. Your archetype influences the way you relate to the world. Those born under the creator archetype often feel compelled to start things before they even understand why. Those shaped by the refiner may feel drawn to truth-telling and purification even when it is uncomfortable. The awakener naturally causes others to reflect, to shift, to stir. The resurrection archetype lives through cycles of dramatic transformation. The blossoming archetype seeks to grow and express. The sacred union archetype longs for harmony and integration. The liberator challenges oppression in any form. The harvester recognizes timing and opportunity. The guardian of September anticipates and prepares. The balancer seeks justice without losing compassion. The grateful heart sees blessings where others see lack. And the eternal hope carries light into places that appear devoid of it. Your archetype also reveals your natural challenges, those psychological shadows that must be integrated for you to grow. The creator may struggle to finish what they start. The refiner may burn too hot. The awakener may disrupt where peace is needed. The resurrection may cling to suffering. The blossoming may fear taking root. Every archetype holds both a gift and a burden, and your task is to learn how to wield the gift without being consumed by its shadow. Dreams often reveal your archetype with surprising clarity. Creators dream of beginnings. Refiners dream of fire. Awakeners dream of trumpets, voices, or sudden light. Resurrection types dream of tombs opening or emerging from dark spaces. These symbols appear because the unconscious is always trying to remind you who you are beneath the surface of daily life. Once you recognize your dominant archetype, a new question naturally arises. If this is my starting point, how do I move toward wholeness? Once you recognize the archetype that welcomed your soul into this world, a deeper truth slowly comes into focus. You are not defined by a single pattern. Your birth month offers your starting vibration, your primary tone, but the symphony of your inner life is composed of all 12 archetypes. Each one lives inside you, waiting for its proper moment to awaken, develop, and take its place in your psychological wholeness. Think of your psyche as a house with 12 rooms. Your birth month marks the room you entered first, the one that feels most familiar, the one whose furniture you instinctively know how to navigate. But the other 11 rooms belong to you just as much. Individuation, the lifelong process of becoming yourself in the fullest sense, requires visiting each room, understanding its purpose, and integrating what it offers. This is why people often feel that their personality changes across different phases of life. A person shaped initially by the awakener archetype might later find themselves stepping into the role of the balancer, discovering newfound clarity in judgment. A harvester may suddenly feel called to the introspection of the guardian archetype as they age. A creator may eventually recognize the necessity of the refiner's fire to deepen their work. These transitions are not contradictions, they are evolution. They are the psyche's natural movement toward greater harmony. Each archetype contains a gift the others need. The liberator cannot guide others to freedom without the wisdom of the balancer. The blossoming archetype asks for the courage of the resurrection to face moments of collapse. The sacred union within you requires the humility of the grateful heart, and the eternal hope leans on the practical foresight of the guardian to stay grounded. These archetypes depend on one another, forming an intricate network of strengths and challenges, each one compensating, complementing, and refining the others. This interplay becomes especially clear in moments of personal crisis. When life pushes you into uncertainty, the psyche instinctively calls upon the archetype you need most, not the one that feels most comfortable. A balancer may need to step aside and let the liberator confront what must be confronted. A guardian may need to surrender planning and embrace resurrection after a collapse. A creator may need to stop initiating and instead practice gratitude, allowing the heart to rest. Your soul knows which archetype is required, even before you consciously understand it. Dreams often reveal this internal dance with striking precision. Someone born under the harvester may dream of fire when the refiner is needed. Someone shaped by the creator may dream of union when integration is calling. These symbols appear as invitations, gentle signals from the unconscious guiding your development toward wholeness. The ultimate purpose of this dance is not perfection, but integration. You were never meant to live from one archetype alone. You were meant to gather them one by one, allowing each to shape you into a more complete expression of who you truly are. And once we understand this inner dance, we arrive at the final and most important question. How do I live my purpose consciously, guided by this knowledge? Standing now at the end of this path, you can begin to see the full shape of your inner landscape, your birth month, your dominant archetype, and the quiet choreography between all 12 forces working inside you. Everything you have discovered leads to one essential truth. You were born with a purpose, and that purpose becomes clearer as you learn to live consciously aligned with the archetypal movement of your soul. Your birth month does not confine you. It orients you. It gives you a compass, a direction, a starting point from which you grow. But the journey toward wholeness is not completed by knowing where you began. It is completed by choosing how you walk forward. Individuation is not passive. It asks for intention, reflection, and courage. It invites you to step into your life with awareness, rather than simply being carried by circumstance. This is where the archetypes become practical. The creator teaches you to initiate when life calls for boldness. The refiner guides you through necessary purification. The awakener helps you rise when you've become too comfortable. The resurrection archetype lifts you when you feel lost in darkness. The blossoming archetype shows you when it's time to expand. The sacred union teaches you to integrate your inner opposites. The liberator urges you to break chains. The harvester teaches timing. The guardian prepares you for transitions. The balancer brings clarity. The grateful heart cultivates appreciation, and the eternal hope lights your way when everything else seems dim. Living your purpose means learning to hear these voices within you, not as noise, but as guidance. It means recognizing when one archetype has become too dominant and another needs to step forward. It means listening to your dreams, your intuition, your inner movements, because the unconscious is always speaking, always guiding, always pointing toward the greater shape of who you can become. This knowledge asks for action. Reflection deepens awareness, but awareness becomes transformation only when you bring it into your daily life. This is why keeping a journal for the next 30 days is so powerful. Each day you can ask yourself, how did my archetype express itself today? How did its shadow appear? Which of the other archetypes stepped forward? What inner movement is trying to guide me now? By observing these patterns, you begin to speak the language of your own soul. Through this practice, meaning becomes visible. Your struggles start to make sense. Your strengths feel less accidental. Your life begins to unfold with coherence, like a story written with intention rather than randomness. And slowly, gently, you discover that you are part of something larger, something ancient, something sacred. Your birth month becomes your teacher. Your archetypes become companions. Your inner life becomes a landscape filled with direction and purpose. And ultimately, this journey leads you to the deepest mystery of all, the self, the center of your being, the divine spark within you that has been guiding your path long before you became aware of it. Everything you have explored brings you closer to this center, where purpose is not something you search for, it is something you remember. This is your invitation, your calling, your beginning.